She'll forgive me after tonight's win. I hoped. She didn't, and I came home broke. My name is Daniel. I deal cards for a living. I used to come home to warm coffee and a wife who smiled when I walked through the door. Now I sleep alone and count quarters for gas. People think dealers can't lose. We know the math, the odds, the house edge. That's what made me dangerous to myself. When the eviction notice came, I didn't panic. I had a plan. I had $1,200 and 3 years of watching people win big. I told myself I was different, smarter, trained, ready. One perfect night would save everything. Our home, our marriage, her faith in me. I walked into my own casino like I owned the place. The first hour felt like proof I was right. Then the cards turned cold, and my certainties cracked. I kept betting bigger, chasing smaller, promising myself just one more hand. When you're drowning in your own expertise and your last hope sits on green felt, do you save your money or your pride? I knew something was wrong when I heard Sarah crying through the bathroom door. Not angry crying. I'd heard plenty of that over the years. This was different. Quieter. The kind of tears that come when you've run out of fight. I was stirring instant coffee in our tiny kitchen when she walked out, still in her nurse scrubs from the night shift. Her eyes were red and puffy. She held a bright yellow piece of paper in her shaking hand. "We got 14 days, she said. Her voice cracked on days. I took the eviction notice from her. The numbers jumped out at me like a slap. $2,400 owed. Pay or vacate. 14 days to come up with money we didn't have. I can't do this anymore, Danny. She slumped into one of our mismatched kitchen chairs. I worked a double last night. 16 hours on my feet. Mrs. Garcia in 4B died, and I had to tell her daughter. Then I come home to this. I sat across from her. The yellow paper felt heavier than it should. We'll figure something out. I can pick up extra shifts. Where? Sarah's laugh came out bitter. You called in sick twice last week at the casino. And before that, you lasted 3 months at Romano's before you had that fight with the head chef. She was right, and we both knew it. I'd bounced between line cook jobs for 2 years. Always some excuse. Always someone else's fault. The truth was simpler and harder to admit. I couldn't hold down regular work when the casino offered flexible dealer shifts and the constant possibility of something bigger. I make good money dealing cards, I said, when you show up. Sarah wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Danny, I love you, but I've been carrying us both for so long I forgot what it felt like to have a partner. The kitchen went quiet except for the hum of our old refrigerator. I could hear Mrs. Kim upstairs running water for her morning shower. Normal sounds of a normal Tuesday. But nothing felt normal anymore. Maybe I can talk to Mr. Chun, I said. Explain the situation. Sarah shook her head. I already tried. He's been patient, but his patience ran out 2 months ago when we missed July's rent. I stared at the notice. 14 days. Not enough time to find a new job. Not enough time to save up. Not enough time to become the man Sarah needed me to be. I'm picking up another double, Sarah said, standing up. Jennifer's sick, so they need coverage. She paused at the kitchen doorway. I need you to figure this out, Danny, because I can't keep being strong for both of us. After she left, I sat alone with the yellow paper and my cold coffee. The apartment felt smaller somehow. The walls seemed closer together. I could see our whole life in that kitchen. The coffee maker Sarah bought with her first nursing paycheck. The magnets from places we'd never visited. The unpaid bills tucked behind the toaster that I called in sick to work. Again. Then I put on my jacket and walked outside. The September air was crisp, full of promise that felt like a lie. I found myself walking through neighborhoods we couldn't afford, tree-lined streets with houses that had driveways and mailboxes and yards where kids could play. Sarah deserved one of those houses. She deserved a husband who could provide them. As I walked, an idea started forming in the back of my mind. Dangerous and perfect at the same time. I knew where to find money. The question was whether I was desperate enough to take the risk. Insurance? I asked the tourist in the Hawaiian shirt that he looked at his cards. Ace showing against my 10. Yeah, sure. Why not? I slid his side bet to the insurance line. Poor bastard didn't know the math. Insurance pays 2 to 1, but the actual odds are worse than that. The house edge on insurance is over 7%, but I took his $5 chip anyway. That's what dealers do. It was Wednesday night at the Riverside Casino, and I was working table 7 in the main pit. The usual crowd, a few regulars who knew basic strategy. Some drunk college kids celebrating someone's birthday. and tourists who thought they could beat a game that's been perfected over decades. 21. The Hawaiian shirt guy hooped as I flipped my whole card. A jack to go with my 10. His insurance bet paid $10. Nice call, I said, sliding him his winnings. But inside, I was calculating. He'd just won because of pure dumb luck. The insurance bet was still mathematically stupid. He'd lose money long-term if he kept making plays like that. That's the thing about dealing cards for 3 years. You see patterns everywhere. You understand probability in your bones. You know exactly how much the house edge grinds away at every bet, every hand, every night. Why was I broke? 2 tables over, Mrs. Patterson was having the kind of night that makes casino legends. I'd been watching her between hands. She'd started with $200 around 7 o'clock. Now it was past 11, and she had close to 2,000 in chips stacked in front of her. Mrs. Patterson taught 4th grade for 30 years before retiring. She drives a 2003 Honda Civic and always orders the early bird special when she comes to the casino restaurant. Nothing about her screams, high roller. But there she sat, splitting 10s like a pro and doubling down on 11s with the confidence of someone who knew something the rest of us didn't. How's she doing it? Jenny asked during my break. Jenny dealt the table next to mine, a chatty girl from Phoenix who'd been at the casino longer than me. Luck, I said, sipping my coffee. Pure, stupid luck. Maybe, but I've seen her here before. She hits streaks like this every few months. Remember that oil company executive who came in last winter? Won 40 grand in one night playing high-limit blackjack. Bought his wife a new car with the winnings. I watched Mrs. Patterson split a pair of 8s against the dealer's 6. Both hands caught face cards. 2018. Easy double win. It's just variance, I said. Math catches up eventually. Does it? Jenny raised an eyebrow. Because that oil guy never came back. He was smart enough to quit while he was ahead. After my break, I went back to table 7. The Hawaiian shirt tourist was gone, down about $60. A new player had taken his seat. A nervous-looking guy in a rumpled business suit who kept checking his phone between hands. First time, I asked as I dealt the cards. God, I hope so, he said. Then he caught himself. First time at this casino. I usually play downtown. He was lying. I could tell by the way he held his cards, the way he stacked his chips. This guy was a regular somewhere, probably had been for years. But he was trying to convince himself this was different. That tonight was special, that I'd seen it 1,000 times. The rationalizations. The small lies people tell themselves to justify sitting down at a table where the odds are stacked against them. But here's what I couldn't stop thinking about as I dealt hand after hand. I understood those odds better than anyone. I knew the exact mathematical edge the house held. I could calculate the expected value of any bet in my head. And yet I was going home to an apartment where the rent was 2 months overdue. Mrs. Patterson colored up her chips around midnight. $1,800 profit. She tipped me 20 and walked out with a smile on her face. The nervous businessman lost his last $40 chip 10 minutes later. On my drive home, I did the math. $1,800. More than our monthly rent. Mrs. Patterson had turned 200 into 2,000 in less than 5 hours, using nothing but basic strategy and a lot of luck. But what if it wasn't just luck? What if someone with real knowledge of the game, someone who understood every nuance of probability and timing, sat down with enough money to weather the inevitable swings? What if that someone was me? I pulled into our parking lot and sat in my car for a long time, engine running, thinking about yellow notices and impossible deadlines and the kind of desperate mathematics that turn smart people into fools. Inside our apartment, Sarah was already asleep. I stood in our bedroom doorway, watching her breathe in the dim light from the hallway. She looked peaceful. Younger than her 32 years, she deserved better than this. Better than unpaid bills and sleepless nights and a husband who dealt cards for other people's dreams. Maybe. It was time to deal myself a hand. Sarah's alarm went off at 10 p.m. Another overnight shift at the hospital. I pretended to be asleep as she moved around our bedroom, gathering scrubs and her stethoscope. The mattress shifted when she sat on the edge to put on her shoes. You okay? She whispered. I made a sleepy noise that could have meant anything. I love you, she said, and kissed my forehead. Then she was gone, and I was alone with my thoughts and the yellow eviction notice still sitting on our kitchen table. I got up and made coffee. Then I sat at my laptop and started researching basic strategy for blackjack. I knew it by heart, of course, when to hit, when to stand, when to double down or split. But I went through the charts anyway, letting the mathematics wash over me like a familiar prayer. Next, I looked up bankroll management. The websites all said the same thing. Never bet more than 1 to 2% of your total bankroll on a single hand. That meant with $1,200, all the money we had left after bills, I should be betting $12 to $24 per hand. But that was advice for recreational players. People who wanted to stretch their gambling budget over a long weekend. I wasn't recreational. I was a professional with 3 years of experience and nothing left to lose that I pulled up a blackjack simulator and started running scenarios. What if I started with $50 bets? What if I increased my bet size when the count was favorable? What if I played perfect basic strategy with just a touch of card counting? The numbers looked promising. Not guaranteed. Nothing in gambling is ever guaranteed, but promising enough. A skilled player with discipline and adequate bankroll could show a profit over time. The key word was adequate. $1,200 wasn't adequate for the kind of conservative play the math demanded. But it might be enough for one perfect night that I opened a new browser tab and checked our bank balance. $1,247.83. After this month's car payment and utilities, we'd be down to about $300. Not enough for next month's rent even if we somehow solved the current crisis. But $1,200, that was a different story. That was enough to play seriously. Enough to weather a few bad hands and still have chips on the table when the cards turned favorable. I found myself sketching out a plan on the back of an envelope. Start at a $25 table. Play perfect basic strategy. Build the bankroll slowly and carefully. Once I was up 400 or 500, move to a $50 table where the real money gets made. The more I thought about it, the more logical it seemed. I wasn't some tourist hoping to get lucky. I was a trained professional who understood the game better than 99% of the people who walked through those casino doors. Sarah thought I was irresponsible. Maybe this would prove her wrong. Maybe this would show her that I could provide for us, that I could solve our problems instead of creating them. I imagined walking into our apartment Saturday morning with the rent money in my pocket. Maybe more than the rent money. Maybe enough to get us caught up on everything and put a little aside for emergencies. I imagined the look on Sarah's face when I handed her the cash. Relief. Gratitude. Maybe even admiration. Around 2 a.m., I started looking at the casino schedule. Friday nights were always busy, which meant lots of tables running and plenty of opportunities to find the right game. I'd worked enough Friday shifts to know the rhythm. Tourists and locals mixing together, money flowing freely, everyone feeling lucky that I could call in sick. Tell them I had food poisoning or something. They wouldn't like it, but they'd manage. They always did. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Long night here. Love you. I texted back. Love you too. Get some rest. But I didn't go to rest. I stayed up until dawn, refining my plan and running more simulations. By the time Sarah got home Friday morning, I'd made my decision that I was going to save us. I was going to prove that sometimes desperate times called for desperate measures. And sometimes, if you were smart enough and skilled enough and brave enough, desperate measures actually worked. I just had to be all. 3. The First National Bank branch smelled like floor cleaner and quiet desperation. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes before going inside, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. $1,200. Our last $1,200. The ATM limit was $300 per day. For what I needed, I'd have to face a human being. I'd have to look someone in the eye while I withdrew every penny we had left. Can I help you? The teller's name tag read Brenda. She looked about 22, with blonde highlights and a smile that seemed genuine. I need to withdraw $1,200. From checking or savings? Checking. We didn't have a savings account. Haven't for 2 years, Brenda typed on her computer. I'll need to see 2 forms of ID for withdrawals over $1,000. I handed her my driver's license and debit card. She studied them both, then looked at me like she was trying to match the face to the photo. I wondered what she saw. A man making a smart financial decision? Or someone about to make the biggest mistake of his life? What denominations would you like? Hundreds, please. She counted out 12 crisp $100 bills. The paper felt different than I expected. Thicker, more substantial. Like real money instead of the plastic chips I was used to handling. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mr. Whitaker? No, that's everything. Have a great afternoon. In my car, I folded the money and put it in my wallet. 1200s made a surprisingly thick stack. The weight of it felt significant, like carrying someone's hopes. I drove past our apartment complex on the way home. A yellow notice hung on Mrs. Garcia's door, the same bright color as ours. Eviction was spreading through the building like a disease. My phone rang. Sarah, hey, how are you feeling? She asked. Better, I lied. The rest helped. Good. Listen, I'm picking up another shift tonight. They're short-staffed, and we need the money. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice was tired but firm. We both know I do. After she hung up, I sat in our parking lot looking at the building where we'd lived for 3 years. The brick was weathered, the paint around the windows starting to peel. Not much to look at, but it was home. Tomorrow night, Sarah would work another 12-hour shift while I risked everything we had. She'd be taking care of sick people, making a difference, earning honest money, and I'd be betting that money on cards. The responsible thing would be to march back into that bank and deposit every dollar. Find a second job, deliver pizzas or wash dishes or do whatever it took to scrape together the rent money honestly. But honest work took time we didn't have. 14 days wasn't enough to earn $2,400 at minimum wage. Sometimes desperate times really did call for desperate measures. I just hoped I was as smart as I thought I was. Friday night, 7:30 p.m. I stood outside the Riverside Casino employee entrance, my civilian clothes feeling strange after 3 years of walking. Through these doors in uniform, the main entrance was different, brighter. The sounds hit differently. 2 slot machines singing their electronic songs, chips clacking against each other, the soft whoosh of cards being shuffled. As an employee, these were work sounds. Background noise to ASA player, they sounded like possibility. Danny, Miguel Santos waved from the pit boss station. You're not on tonight. Personal time, I said, patting my wallet. Thought I'd see how the other half lives. Miguel laughed. Don't lose your paycheck. If only he knew. I bought 300 in chips at the cashier cage. 6 purple $25 chips and 30 red $5 chips. The cashier was someone I didn't recognize, probably new. She counted out the chips with practiced efficiency, sliding them across the counter in neat stacks. Good luck, she said. I nodded and headed for the blackjack pit. Table selection mattered. Too many players and the cards moved too slowly. Too few and you drew attention. I wanted a middle ground, busy enough to blend in, quiet enough to think. Table 12 looked perfect. Tony was dealing, which was good. I knew his patterns, his speed, his tells. The other players were obvious tourists, a middle-aged couple from Kansas sharing a stack of chips, a young guy in a baseball cap betting minimum and drinking beer. Mind if I join? I asked. Welcome aboard, Tony said, shuffling the cards. He didn't seem surprised to see me. Dealers play too sometimes. Not often, and usually not smart, but it happened. I took the seat on first base, the chair closest to Tony's left hand. Best position to watch the cards come out of the shoe. What's the minimum? I asked, though I already knew. 25. I placed 1 purple chip in the betting circle. The felt was worn smooth by thousands of hands, thousands of desperate hopes. The cards came fast. Jack for me. 6 showing for Tony. I looked at my whole card. Another jack. 20. Tony worked around the table. The couple from Kansas hit their 16 and busted. The baseball cap guy stood on 19. Tony flipped his whole card, a 10. 16 total. He drew a 5.21. House wins. Sorry, folks, Tony said, collecting the losing bets. My 20 pushed against his 21. No win, no loss. Just getting started. The next hand I caught an 11 against Tony's 5. Perfect double-down situation. I slid another purple chip next to my original bet and tapped the felt. Doubling down, Tony announced. The card came face up. A 9. 20 total against Tony's weak 5 showing. Tony flipped his whole card. A 6, giving him 11. He drew a 10. 21 again. 2 hands, 2 losses. Down $50 in less than 3 minutes. I told myself it was just variance. Bad luck happens to everyone. The mathematics would even out over time, but $50 was a car payment. $50 was a week of groceries. $50 was the first step down a slope I'd seen claim. Hundreds of players. I placed another $25 chip in the circle and tried to ignore the small voice in my head asking what the hell I thought I was doing. By 9:30, I was up $420. The cards had turned in my favor around 8:15. First, A natural blackjack against Tony's 20. Then a perfect double down that caught a face card. Then another blackjack 2 hands later. The couple from Kansas had left after losing their vacation money. The baseball cap guy was down to his last few chips. But I kept winning, and each win felt like vindication. "You're on fire tonight," said the new player who'd taken the Kansas couple's seat. She was maybe 40, well-dressed, drinking white wine from a plastic cup. "Just following basic strategy," I said, which was true. No card counting, no exotic systems. Just perfect mathematical play and good fortune. The wine lady didn't know basic strategy. She hit soft 18 against small dealer cards. She stood on 12 against face cards. She took insurance every time the dealer showed an ACE. In other words, she was donating money to the casino. But tonight, even she was winning. That's the thing about hot streaks. They lift everyone at the table. The cards don't care about skill level when they're running good. Dealers got to break some time. The baseball cap guy said, pushing his last $25 chip into the circle, that he was right. Tony had been making hand after hand for the past hour, but blackjack isn't like poker. Each hand is independent. Past results don't influence future cards, but tell that to the gambling gods. Tony dealt himself a 6-up. The baseball cap guy caught 14 and stood. The wine lady got 19 and looked pleased. I caught a 7, soft 18. Against a 6, soft 18 is an automatic double down. I slid another chip next to my bet. "Doubling," I said. Tony dealt me a 3. Ace 7-3. 21. Tony flipped his whole card. A 10, giving him 16. He drew a card. A jack. 26. Dealer busts. Everyone won. The baseball cap guy pumped his fist. The wine lady clapped her hands. I collected my chips with the calm satisfaction of someone who'd made the mathematically correct play and been rewarded for it. "Nice double," Tony said. Sliding $50 worth of chips across the felt, I was up $420. The rent money was safe, plus I had enough profit to move up in stakes. This was how it was supposed to work. Knowledge and discipline paying off. Miguel walked by during a shuffle break. "How you doing, Danny?" "Can't complain," I said. Stacking my chips, he looked at my growing stack and nodded approvingly. "Just remember, the house edge doesn't take a night off." Good advice. The kind of advice I'd given to friends who asked about gambling. The kind of advice I'd ignored completely by being here in the first place. But $420 was hard to argue with. Maybe Miguel was wrong. Maybe sometimes the house edge took a break for people who truly understood the game. The wine lady colored up her chips and left. A new player took her seat. An older man with expensive shoes and a Rolex that caught the overhead lights. "What's the table max?" he asked Tony. 500. The man placed a black chip in the betting circle. $100 on a single hand. I looked at my stack of chips. $420 profit, plus my original 300. 720 total. At the $100 table, that money would go much further. The wins would be bigger. The potential profit much greater. I caught Tony's eye. "Can you color me up?" He converted my smaller chips into blacks and purples. $720 in neat, manageable stacks. "Taking a break?" he asked. "Moving up?" I said. The $100 table was 3 spots over. Minimum bet 4 times higher than where I'd been playing. But with 700 in chips and a hot streak running, it seemed like the natural next step. After all, I wasn't gambling anymore. I was investing in my future. Table 18 felt different. Heavier. The conversations were quieter, the betting more serious. No baseball caps or plastic wine cups here. The minimum bet was $100. The maximum was $1,500. The difference between my old table and this one was the difference between playing for groceries and playing for rent. "Good evening," said the dealer. Her name tag read Rebecca. She looked to be in her 30s, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of professional demeanor that came from dealing with serious money. "Evening," I said. Taking the middle seat, there were only 2 other players. An Asian man in his 50s with perfectly manicured nails, betting 2 hands of 300 each. A younger guy, maybe 25, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. I placed a black chip in the betting circle. $100. The size of my entire original bankroll 3 hours ago. Rebecca dealt the cards with mechanical precision. No chatter, no commentary. Just cards and chips and the soft sound of money changing hands. I caught Queen 8 against Rebecca's 7. 18. A marginal hand. But the right play was to stand and hope the dealer busted. The Asian man's first hand caught 20. His second hand got 19. He stood on both. The suit guy caught ace-9. Natural 20. Rebecca flipped her whole card. A 5, giving her 12. She drew again, a 10.22. Dealer bust. Everyone won. I collected my $100 profit and felt the familiar rush of vindication. Nice start, the suit guy said. I nodded, trying to project the calm confidence of someone who belonged at this level. Inside, though, my heart was hammering. $100 was more than I'd ever bet on a single hand in my life. The next hand I caught 11 against Rebecca's 10. Perfect double-down situation, but doubling would mean risking another 100. I hesitated for just a moment. Then I slid a second black chip next to the first. Doubling down, Rebecca announced. The card came face up. A 9. 20 total. Rebecca flipped her whole card. Another 10, giving her 20. Push. No win, no loss. The Asian man was up several thousand already. The suit guy was breaking even. And me? I was up exactly $100 after 2 hands to AT my old table. I'd been winning consistently for over an hour. Here, I was just treading water, but that was okay. Variance was expected at higher stakes. The swings were bigger in both directions. The key was staying disciplined and letting the mathematics work. I placed another black chip in the circle and waited for the cards to turn in my favor. They had to eventually. That's what mathematics promised. The question was whether I had enough money to wait for the promise to be kept at 1:15 a.m. I was down $300 from my peak, sitting at 720 total. Still up from where I'd started, but the trend was pointing in the wrong direction. Rebecca dealt cards with the same mechanical efficiency, but the cards themselves had turned hostile. Dealer 21 after dealer 21. My perfect double downs caught small cards. My 19th lost to dealer 20s. The Asian man had left 30 minutes ago, up several thousand. The suit guy was hanging tough, playing 2 hands of 200 each. A new player had joined us, a woman in her 60s with diamond earrings and steady hands. Rough patch, the suit guy said during a shuffle break. Variance, I replied, trying to sound like I meant it. But $300 wasn't variance. $300 was Sarah's entire weekly paycheck. $300 was our grocery budget for 6 weeks. That I placed another black chip in the betting circle. Hand after hand, I watched $100 bills disappear into Rebecca's chip tray. Each loss stung more than the last. By 2 a.m., I was down to 500 in chips. Still up 200 from my original 300, but a far cry from the 720 I'd held an hour ago. The diamond earring lady was doing fine, betting conservatively and catching decent cards. The suit guy had colored up and left, roughly even for the night. That left me alone with Rebecca and the steady erosion of my bankroll. You okay? Rebecca asked during another shuffle break. Fine, I said, though I wasn't. My shirt was damp with sweat despite the casino's aggressive air conditioning. My hands shook slightly when I handled my chips. That I was supposed to be the expert here, the professional who understood the game better than anyone. But understanding probability doesn't make the cards fall your way. Maybe take a break, Rebecca suggested. Walk around, get some air. Good advice. Smart advice. The kind of advice I'd give to any player showing signs of tilt. Instead, I placed 2 black chips in the betting circle. $200 on a single hand. Rebecca raised an eyebrow but dealt the cards. That I caught 13 against her 10. The worst possible situation, a breaking hand against a strong dealer card. Basic strategy, said to hit. I knew the mathematics. With a 10 showing, the dealer had roughly a 77% chance of making a hand. I had to try to improve my 13, even though hitting might bust me. I tapped the felt. The card came face up. A 9.22. Bust point $200 gone in 30 seconds. Sorry, Rebecca said, collecting my chips. I was down to 300 total. Exactly where I'd started 4 hours ago. All that profit, all that early success, all that validation, gone, but 300 was still rent money. Part of rent money, anyway. I could walk away right now and tell Sarah I'd managed to save some of our deposit money. Not the whole solution, but better than nothing. I placed 1 black chip in the betting circle, just 1 more hand. Just until the cards turned back my way. 2:30 a.m. Down to $100 in chips. The mathematics I'd trusted so completely had become my enemy. Rebecca dealt with the same professional detachment, but I caught the occasional glance of concern. She'd seen this before, the steady decline from confidence to desperation, The increasing bet sizes as losses mounted. I'd abandoned basic strategy 20 minutes ago. Now I was playing hunches, gut feelings, the desperate arithmetic of someone who needed to get even fast. Insurance bets. Splitting tens. Standing on soft 17 against small cards. Every decision I made violated 3 years of professional knowledge. But professional knowledge had gotten me into this mess. Sir, Rebecca was waiting for my decision. I had 16 against her 9. Basic strategy said hit. But basic strategy had been failing me all night. I stood. Rebecca flipped her whole card. A 7, giving her 16. She drew again, a 5.21. I lost, down to my last black chip. $100 between me and complete disaster. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Busy night here. How are you feeling? I stared at the message for a long moment. How was I feeling? Like a man who'd just gambled away his rent money. Like a husband who'd betrayed his wife's trust in the worst possible way. I typed back. Better. Get some rest when you can. The lie came easily. Too easily. I placed my last chip in the betting circle. You sure? Rebecca asked quietly. I nodded. She dealt the cards. Jack for me. 6 showing for her. I looked at my whole card. Another jack. 20. A strong hand. Not unbeatable, but strong. Rebecca had a 6 showing, which gave her about a 42% chance of busting. She flipped her whole card. A 5, giving her 11. She drew again. The card seemed to hang in the air for an eternity. A 10 would give her 21. A 9 would give her 20. Anything 5 or higher, and I'd lose everything. The card hit the felt face up, a 10.21. Dealer wins. I stared at the card for a moment, not quite believing it. $100. Gone. Just like that. I'm sorry, Rebecca said, and she sounded like she meant it. I nodded and stood up from the table. My legs felt unsteady, like I'd been sitting for days instead of hours. Thank you, I said, though I wasn't sure what I was thanking her for. The casino around me continued its eternal dance. Slot machines rang and chimed. Other players laughed and groaned and placed their bets. The world kept spinning, but I was frozen in place, staring at the empty betting circle where my last hope had just died. $1,200. Gone. Sarah's trust. Probably gone too. Our apartment. Definitely gone. I walked toward the exit on unsteady legs, past tables where other people were living their own dreams and nightmares. Past the cashier cage where I'd bought my chips with such confidence hours ago. Outside, the parking lot was mostly empty. The night air was cool and sharp, a contrast to the casino's eternal artificial climate. I sat in my car with the engine off, trying to figure out how to explain to Sarah that the man she'd married was exactly the failure she'd feared. He was 4 a.m. I sat in the casino parking lot, engine off, watching the sky lighten in the east. Early shift workers were arriving. Housekeeping, kitchen staff, the unlucky dealers who'd drawn the 6-2 shift. I knew most of them. We'd shared breaks and complaints about difficult customers. They waved when they recognized my car, probably wondering why I was sitting motionless in the employee lot at dawn. My phone had buzzed twice with texts from Sarah. First, crazy night. Lost 2 patients. Then, heading home soon. Love you. I should start the car. Drive home. Face the music. Instead, I reached for my wallet. 3 $20 bills. Gas money for the week. Enough for one last attempt at redemption. No. That was insane. $60 wouldn't solve anything. $60 was grocery money, not salvation money. But $60 could become $120, then $240, then $480. The mathematics of desperation had their own logic, independent of probability and common sense. I walked back through the casino doors. The blackjack pit was mostly empty. Only 2 tables running, both with $5 minimums. The serious money games wouldn't restart until later in the morning. Table 3 had 1 player, a woman in her 70s nursing a cup of coffee and betting minimum. The dealer was someone I didn't recognize, probably knew. I bought $60 in chips. 12 red, $5 chips. Good morning, the dealer said. His name tag read Kevin. Morning. I placed 1 red chip in the betting circle. The woman caught 20. I caught 19. Kevin caught 18. Everyone won. A good start, but $5 wins wouldn't solve anything. I needed to bet bigger, win faster. I placed 2 chips in the circle. $10. Lost. 4 chips. $20. Lost again. I was down to 6 chips. $30. Half my remaining money gone in 3 hands. My phone buzzed again. Sarah, on my way home. Can't wait to see you. The weight of her message hit me like a physical blow. She was coming home to a husband who'd just destroyed their lives. Coming home to news that would shatter what little trust remained between us. I placed all 6 remaining chips in the betting circle. $30. Everything I had left in the world. Kevin dealt the cards. I caught a 6. Soft 17. Against Kevin's 5 showing. Basic strategy said to double down. But I didn't have money to double. I had to play the hand as it was. Hit, I said. The card came down. A 4.a64. 21. Kevin flipped his whole card. A 10, giving him 15. He drew again. A 7.22. Dealer bust. I won $30. Back to 60 total. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe this was the beginning of the comeback. Maybe mathematics would finally favor the man who understood them best. But $60 was still just grocery money. Still nowhere near rent money. I placed 3 chips in the circle. $15. Lost. .6 chips. $30. Lost. All in again. $15. Lost. I stared at the empty betting circle, feeling hollowed out and strange. No more chips. No more money. No more chances. Tough break, Kevin said. I nodded and walked away from the table. I in the parking lot. I sat in my car again and tried to practice what I'd say to Sarah. How do you explain the unexplainable? How do you apologize for the unforgivable? The sun was fully up now. Friday had become Saturday. In 8 hours, Sarah would be home from her shift, expecting to find her husband recovered from his illness. Instead, she'd find the man who'd just gambled away there. Future. I started the car and drove toward the conversation that would end. Everything. I sat in my car outside the casino until the parking lot filled with day shift employees. The morning crew arriving for another 8 hours of dealing cards and serving drinks to people like me. People who thought they were smarter than mathematics. The radio played soft jazz, something Sarah would have liked. She always said jazz helped her relax after difficult shifts. I wondered what would help her relax after this. My phone showed 6:15 a.m. Sarah's shift ended at 7. She'd be home by 7:30, maybe earlier if the morning nurse came in on time. I should have been practicing what to say, rehearsing explanations. But every conversation I imagined ended the same way, with Sarah realizing she'd married a man who couldn't be trusted with $60, let alone $1,200. But a security guard knocked on my window. Someone I didn't recognize. You okay, sir? Fine, I said. Just tired. He looked at me with the professional concern of someone who'd seen people sitting in casino parking lots before. People who'd lost more than they could afford. People who were trying to figure out how to go home and explain the unexplainable. Have a safe drive, he said. I started the car and pulled on a highway. 9. The familiar route home took me past the diner where Sarah and I had our first date, past the urgent care clinic where she'd worked before getting her hospital job, past the gas station where we'd bought lottery tickets on our anniversary, joking about what we'd do with millions. We'd never won more than $20 on those tickets, but we'd had fun trying. Now I understood the difference between $20 and $1,200. The difference between dreaming and destroying. Traffic was light. Most people were still asleep or just getting up to start normal Saturday mornings, checking the weather, making coffee, planning their weekends. I'd planned to surprise Sarah with rent money. Instead, I was planning how to tell her we'd be homeless in 10 days. Our apartment complex came into view. The same weathered brick building where we'd lived for 3 years. Not much to look at, but it had been hours that Sarah's car was in our parking space. She was home early. I sat in the parking lot for another 10 minutes, watching other tenants come and go. Mrs. Kim from upstairs, carrying grocery bags. The college kid from 2B, heading out for his morning run. Normal people doing normal things on a normal Saturday morning. I wasn't normal anymore. I was the guy who'd gambled away his rent money, the husband who'd betrayed his wife's trust, the failure Sarah had always feared I might become. But sitting in the parking lot wouldn't change any of that. I took a deep breath, turned off the engine, and walked toward the conversation that would end my marriage. Sarah was in the kitchen, still wearing her scrubs. She looked exhausted but smiled when I walked in. "You're up early," she said, pouring coffee into her travel mug. "Feeling better?" "Yeah," I said. The lie stuck in my throat. She studied my face. 3 years of marriage had taught her to read my expressions. "You look tired. Did you sleep at all?" I sat down at our kitchen table. The eviction notice was still there, bright yellow and final. 14 days to pay or leave. Sarah, I need to tell you something. She set down her coffee and looked at me with genuine concern. What's wrong? I took the money. The rent money. I went to the casino last night. The words hung in the air between us. Sarah blinked twice, processing what I'd said. What money? All of it. The 1,200 from our checking account. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, understanding, and finally something I'd never seen before. Complete defeat. You gambled our rent money. I thought I could win. I know the games. I understand the mathematics. You thought what? Her voice was very quiet. That you were special? That the rules didn't apply to you? I tried to explain about Mrs. Patterson's winning streak, about my professional knowledge, about the perfect plan I'd developed. But the words sounded hollow even to me. How much did you lose? All of it. Sarah sat down across from me. She didn't scream or throw things. She just nodded slowly, like she was finally understanding something she'd suspected for a long time. I'm going to stay at Kim's for a while, she said. Sarah, please, I can't do this anymore, Danny. I've been carrying us both for so long I forgot what it felt like to have a partner. But this. She gestured at the eviction notice. This is something I can't carry. She stood up and poured her coffee down the sink. I need to think about whether we have anything left to save. We do. We can figure this out together. No, she said, not looking at me. We can't. Because I don't trust you anymore. And I don't think I can learn to trust you again. She walked toward our bedroom to pack a bag. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the yellow notice and trying to understand how $1,200 had cost me everything. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Kim's TV through the thin walls. Saturday morning cartoons, probably for her grandkids. Normal sounds of a normal weekend. But nothing in my life would ever be normal again. I woke up alone Tuesday morning for the first time in 6 years. Sarah had left Sunday night while I was at work. She'd taken her clothes, her books, her nursing school diploma from the wall. The spaces where her things had been looked like missing teeth. Our bedroom felt enormous without her presence. The bed seemed too big, the silence too complete. I'd grown so used to the sound of her breathing, the warmth of another person sharing space with me. Now I had all the space I wanted and none of the comfort. The eviction notice still hung on the refrigerator. 3 days left. Mr. Chun had called twice, leaving polite but firm messages about the timeline. Pay or vacate. No extensions. I'd called in sick to work again. Miguel had been understanding the first few times, but I could hear the frustration in his voice now. Dealers who didn't show up didn't stay employed long, but I couldn't face the casino yet. Couldn't deal cards to other people's hopes when I'd just destroyed my own. The apartment felt like a museum of our marriage. Wedding photos on the mantle. Sarah's coffee mug in the sink, still stained from Saturday morning. A grocery list in her handwriting on the refrigerator. Milk, bread, hope. She'd written hope as a joke a few weeks ago. Now it looked like an accusation. I spent the morning walking through the empty rooms, trying to remember what happiness felt like. The living room where we'd watched movies on Friday nights. The kitchen where she'd taught me to make pancakes from scratch. The bedroom where we'd planned our future and promised to love each other through everything. Apparently, everything had limits. Around noon, I started making lists. What to sell, what to store, what to throw away. 6 years of shared life reduced to practical decisions about stuff. Her nursing textbooks were still on the shelf. I should probably pack them for Kim to collect. Sarah would need them for reference, for continuing education credits. She was building a career, making a difference in people's lives. I was dealing cards and gambling away rent money. Maybe she was right to leave. Maybe I'd been an anchor dragging her down without realizing my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Kim. Sarah asked me to arrange pickup of her remaining items. When is convenient? I stared at the message for a long time. Kim was Sarah's sister, 2 years younger and infinitely more practical. She'd never liked me much, probably suspected I wasn't good enough for Sarah. Now she had proof that I typed back. Anytime. I'll be here. The apartment felt even emptier after I sent the message. Soon, even Sarah's leftover belongings would be gone. And I'd be alone with the consequences of Friday night. Just me and the yellow notice and the echoes of a marriage I'd destroyed with $1,200 and a handful of cards. Chin knocked at 11 a.m. Tuesday, carrying a manila folder and wearing the expression of a man who'd done this before. Daniel, he said when I opened the door. May I come in? Of course. He sat on our couch, The same couch where Sarah and I had watched movies and planned our future. The cushions still held the impression of her body from Sunday night, the last night she'd spent here. I have the final paperwork, Mr. Chen said, opening his folder. But first, I want to talk. I'd expected anger, threats, legal terminology, and deadlines. Instead, Mr. Chen looked tired and somehow sad. You're not the first good tenant to hit hard times, he said. Won't be the last. This business teaches you about people, about how quickly things can change. He pulled out a form with official letterhead. This gives you until Saturday to vacate. No additional fees, no damage to your credit if you leave clean. That's generous. 20 years ago, I lost everything in the stock market, he said quietly. House, savings, nearly my marriage. I thought I was smart. Thought I understood the game better than everyone else. I looked at him with new interest. Mr. Chun had always seemed so stable, so financially secure. It was hard to imagine him desperate and broke. What happened? I got greedy. Started trading on margin, borrowing money to buy more shares. When the crash came, I lost everything. He paused. Took me 5 years to rebuild. Nearly lost my wife in the process. But you made it back. Eventually. But the lesson stuck. He leaned forward. The house always wins, Daniel. Whether it's stocks or cards or real estate. The house always wins because the house doesn't get emotional. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear children playing in the courtyard. Normal sounds of a normal Tuesday. Sarah's a good woman, Mr. Chin said. The best. Then maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's the bottom. And sometimes you need to hit bottom before you can climb back up. He handed me the paperwork. Saturday by noon. Leave it clean, and I'll give you a good reference for your next place. After he left, I sat on the couch holding the eviction notice. 4 days to pack up 6 years of marriage. 4 days to figure out where to go next. But Mr. Chin's words stuck with me. Maybe this was the bottom. Maybe from here, the only direction was up. The question was whether I had the strength to climb, and whether Sarah would be willing to wait for me at the top. Wednesday night, 6 p.m. My first shift back at the Riverside Casino since Friday night. Walking through those doors felt like returning to the scene of a crime. The same sounds, the same lights, the same carpet under my feet. But everything looked different now. I knew what it felt like to be on the other side of the felt. Danny, Jenny waved from table 5. You're back. Feeling better. Getting there, I said. Miguel approached as I pinned on my name tag. Good to see you. We've been shorthanded. Sorry about that. Family emergency. He nodded but didn't ask for details. Miguel had been a pit boss for 15 years. He'd probably seen every excuse, every personal crisis that could derail an employee. Table 7 was waiting for me. The same worn felt, the same betting circles, the same shoe filled with mathematical certainty. But now I understood something I'd missed before. The desperation in players' eyes, the small lies they told themselves. The moment when hope turned into something darker. My first customer was a businessman from Phoenix. He bought in for $500, betting 25 per hand with the confidence of someone who thought he understood the game, that I'd been exactly like him 5 days ago. How's the table running? He asked. Cards don't have memory, I said, dealing his first hand. He caught 17 against my 6 showing. Basic strategy said to stand, but he tapped the felt for another card. Hit me. I dealt him a 7. 24. Bust. Damn, he said. But he was already reaching for another chip. The next player was Mrs. Patterson. She smiled when she saw me. Danny, I was wondering where you'd been. Just a few days off. She bought in for her usual 200. The same amount she'd parlayed into 1,800 the night I'd watched her from behind this very table. I came back Saturday night, she said as I shuffled. Gave it all back, and then some. Funny how that works. I dealt her cards, trying to keep my expression neutral. Mrs. Patterson had lost everything she'd won Friday night. The miracle run that had inspired my disaster had been temporary after all. That's the nature of the game, I said. She caught 20 and smiled. At least tonight's off to a good start. For the next 3 hours, I dealt cards and watched people make the same mistakes I'd made. The small increases in bet size after losses. The abandonment of basic strategy when emotions took over. The certainty that this time would be different. During my break, I walked past table 18. Rebecca was dealing to a new crowd of players. She caught my eye and nodded professionally that I wondered if she remembered me. The desperate player who'd lost his last $100 at her table. The employee who'd forgotten which side of the felt he belonged on? Probably not. Dealers see dozens of players every shift. One more losing story wouldn't stand out, but it stood out to me. It would always stand out to me. When my shift ended at 2 a.m., I drove home to an empty apartment. 3 more days until eviction. 3 more days to figure out what came next. But at least I was working again. At least I was earning honest money instead of chasing fantasies. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Thursday night. Table 7. Kevin from security sat down with $500 in cash. I'd known Kevin for 2 years. We'd shared breaks, complained about difficult customers, talked about sports and weather and all the small talk that fills casino downtime. But I'd never seen him on the other side of the felt. "Hey, Danny," he said, sliding his money across the table. Felt like trying my luck. "First time playing here?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Kevin's hands shook slightly as he stacked his chips. His eyes had the same desperate brightness I'd seen in the mirror Friday night. "Yeah, well, you know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. Kevin was having money problems. Probably behind on bills, maybe facing some kind of deadline. He'd convinced himself that his knowledge of the casino gave him an edge, the same logic that had destroyed my life 5 days ago. $5 minimum, I said, though Kevin already knew that he placed a red chip in the betting circle. Conservative start. Just like I'd planned, Kevin caught 13 against my 10 showing. Textbook hit situation, but he hesitated. "What do you think?" He asked that I couldn't give advice. Casino policy was clear about dealer neutrality, but I could see Kevin wrestling with the same mathematical certainties I'd abandoned under pressure. "House rules say I can't advise on play," I said. Kevin tapped the felt. I dealt him a 6. 19. I flipped my whole card, another 10. 20. Kevin lost his first hand, but he wasn't worried yet. Neither had I been after my first loss. For the next hour, I watched Kevin go through the same progression I'd experienced. Conservative betting that gradually increased as losses mounted. Basic strategy abandoned for hunches and desperation. The confident employee transformed into just another mark. By midnight, Kevin was down $300, betting 25 per hand, chasing losses with bigger risks. "This is crazy," he said after losing another hand. "I know better than this." He did know better. We all knew better. But knowledge meant nothing when emotion took over. During a shuffle break, Kevin leaned closer. "Danny, what would you do? If you were playing, I mean." I looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the sweat on his forehead, the tension in his shoulders, the desperate hope that someone with inside knowledge could save him from himself. "I'd go home," I said quietly. "But the count doesn't matter." "Go home, Kevin." He stared at me for a moment, and I saw a recognition dawn in his eyes. Not just of my advice, but of what I wasn't saying. That I'd been exactly where he was sitting. That I understood his desperation because I'd lived it. "You've been here before," he said. I nodded. Kevin looked at his remaining chips, maybe $60 left from his original 500. Then he looked at me again. "Did you go home?" "No," I said. "I didn't." "What happened?" I gestured subtly around us. The casino, the table, the job that was all I had left. "Everything," I said. Kevin colored up his remaining chips and left the table. I never saw him play again. Friday morning, my last day in the apartment. Cardboard boxes from the liquor store sat open on our living room floor, waiting to swallow 6 years of shared life that I started with the practical stuff. Dishes, clothes, books. Items that had clear ownership or obvious destination. But the deeper I dug, the harder the decisions became. Wedding photos from our honeymoon in Cabo. Sarah's diploma hanging in the hallway. The coffee maker we'd bought together at Target, arguing playfully about whether we needed the programmable timer. Everything carried memory. Everything hurt to touch. Kim arrived at noon, efficient and cold. "I'm here for Sarah's things," she said. "They're in boxes by the door." She loaded Sarah's belongings into her car without small talk. But as she carried the last box, she stopped. "You know she's seeing a counselor," Kim said. "That's good. She should. Individual therapy. To help her figure out what she wants." I understood the subtext. Sarah was trying to decide whether our marriage was worth saving. Whether 6 years of love could survive one night of betrayal. "Is she?" I started, then stopped. I had no right to ask. "She's hurt," Kim said, "and confused. She loved you, Danny. Maybe still does. But love isn't enough when trust is gone." Kim loaded the last box and closed her trunk. "She asked me to give you this." She handed me a small envelope with my name written in Sarah's handwriting. What is it? I don't know. She just said you'd understand when you saw it. After Kim left, I sat on our empty couch and opened the envelope. Inside was Sarah's wedding ring, the simple gold band I'd slipped onto her finger 6 years ago, promising to love and protect and cherish her forever. She'd worn it every day since our wedding. Through nursing school, through my job changes, through all the financial stress and late-night arguments. Even Friday night, when she'd left for her shift, the ring had been on her finger. Now it sat in my palm. Catching the afternoon light streaming through our living room window, that I understood what she was telling me. The promises we'd made were broken. The commitment we'd shared was over. The ring meant nothing now except what we'd lost, but she hadn't thrown it away. She'd saved it, kept it safe, returned it to me with careful intention. Maybe that meant something. Maybe it meant she wanted me to remember what we'd had. Maybe it meant she hoped I could become worthy of it again someday. Or maybe it just meant goodbye. I put the ring in my pocket and went back to packing. Tomorrow I'd be gone from this place. The yellow notice would be satisfied. Mr. Chun would find new tenants who could pay their rent on time. But Sarah's ring would come with me, wherever I went next. A reminder of what I'd gambled away and what I needed to earn back. Friday evening, 6 p.m. The apartment was empty except for boxes and echoes that I'd given my notice at the casino that morning. Miguel hadn't seemed surprised. Dealers who'd been through what I'd been through rarely lasted long afterward. The temptation was too great, the memories too fresh. Good luck, he'd said, shaking my hand. And Danny? Stay on the right side of the felt. My car was loaded with everything I owned. Clothes, books, a few pieces of furniture that would fit in whatever studio apartment I could afford. The rest would go to Goodwill or the dumpster. 6 years of marriage reduced to what fit in a Honda Civic. I did one final walkthrough, checking empty closets and cleaning the bathroom. Mr. Chun had been generous about the terms, but I wanted to leave the place spotless. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was just the right thing to do. I in the bathroom. I found something that stopped me cold. Sarah's wedding ring sat on the counter where she'd left it. Not in the envelope Kim had given me. That was a different ring, one I'd never seen before. This was Sarah's actual wedding band, deliberately placed where I'd be sure to find it. I picked it up, feeling the familiar weight of the gold band. She'd worn this ring for 6 years, through good times and bad, through promises kept and broken. But she'd left it here on purpose. Left it for me to find during my final moments in the place we'd called home. I heard voices outside, new tenants touring the apartment with Mr. Chun. A young couple, holding hands and talking excitedly about paint colors and furniture placement. Starting their own version of the dream Sarah and I had begun 6 years ago. I hoped they'd be smarter than us. I hoped they'd remember that trust was more fragile than love, easier to break than build. I put Sarah's ring in my pocket next to the other one Kim had given me. 2 rings now, 2 different messages, or maybe the same message told twice. That some things, once broken, couldn't be fixed. That some bets cost more than money. That some losses taught lessons too expensive to afford. But maybe, just maybe, carrying them would remind me of what was worth protecting, what was worth earning back, what was worth becoming worthy of again. I locked the apartment door for the last time and walked to my car. The young couple was still outside, planning their future in the place where mine had ended. I drove away without looking back, Sarah's rings in my pocket, carrying the weight of choices that had destroyed more than money and the faint hope that someday, somehow, I might deserve to give them back.